Hey everybody, this is Dustin with www.gamblingonfreedom.com. I'm a certified clinical hypnotherapist and I specialize in problem gambling, compulsive gambling, gambling addiction. I'm here today to talk to you guys a little bit about that. First off, I want to thank my subscribers. Thank you for helping the channel grow. If you like this content, please subscribe, follow for more, and get notifications on new information coming out each week. Also, I got a new headset, new setup. Hopefully, this is going to make things a little bit clearer. So I wanted to try it out today, and hopefully, this will clear up my voice, take out some background noise, those kinds of things. So, all that being said, I wanted to start off today, hopefully, painting a picture about something important. And what I really want you guys to think about is what it might be like to quadruple problem gambling, compulsive gambling, gambling addiction issues in the next 10 years. Because I believe that that is exactly where we're going. Okay. One of the reasons why I'm even doing this in the first place is because I've seen how gambling addiction can ruin everyone's life. It can ruin the gambler's life, but it's not just their life. It's ruining their families' lives, their kids' lives, it could take away their careers, their homes, their cars. I've known gamblers who literally lose everything and still do their best to make enough money to go gamble again. Okay, they've lost everything already. There's people who will, get their paycheck, be in mountains of debt, but still go use their whole paycheck to go gamble. Okay, I think this is only getting worse. The reason I say that is because there are more apps than ever to gamble on, whether it's real or not, it doesn't matter. The habit of gambling is still getting created, and that turns into the addiction. Okay. And again, it's not just targeted at adults. Okay. A teenager could go online, go to the Play Store in their phone, and pick up a app, fantasy football app where they bet. There's even apps out there that allow you to bet fake money so that you can get used to betting. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Now you got to think about the advertisements, right? There's advertisements everywhere for gambling, right? And not only that, guys, but people teach how to gamble on things like TikTok. Right? You can go to TikTok, search up gambling, and you'll find people teaching you new strategies of gambling. Okay, so it's being promoted by media, it's being promoted by apps, it's being promoted by people, and it's only going to increase more and more and more. Now, the problem is gambling or gambling addiction, I should say, isn't always easy to see. Okay, you could have a very high functioning gambler. This is a gambler who, you know, has their car, has their house, has their family, has their career. They have everything in order, but on the weekends they go gamble. Now, a high functioning gambler hasn't lost everything yet. They still might believe that gambling is a good thing, that maybe, because they're not wasting their whole paycheck on the gambling, that they're safe. But the truth is that gambling as a resource to that high functioning gambler is only a resource before it becomes a problem. Okay, it's only a resource until it isn't. So yes, it might be fun. It might be, good to get away. You work really hard. I get that. You get to the weekend and you have time. You get to go do whatever you want to do now, right? And then you go gamble. And the problem is that this doesn't seem like a problem until it becomes one, right? Until you try to stop, like you legitimately try. Maybe you haven't even thought of stopping it. It hasn't even crossed your mind. You're just playing the game because you like it. You're not breaking the bank yet. Nothing's really worsening for you, right? It isn't until you try to get out of the cycle of gambling that you realize you're going to have a problem. Okay, so a high functioning gambler is going to run into that risk of, when does this become enough? Do I have to gamble forever? Right? You're going to run into the risk of sort of coming to this realization that you've been doing gambling for so long, it's not as easy to quit as you think it is. Like, maybe you stop for a couple months, but just like a person trying to lose weight, they go to the gym for 6 months and they come back to their original living style, and then they gain all the weight that they lost back. It's exactly like that. You know, it isn't going to be a problem until you decide that you want to quit, and then you realize that every time you try, you go back. Okay, just like a cigarette smoker who, stops smoking for 6 months or a year, and then comes right back onto it. Okay, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why even just one cigarette can get you right back into binging the same amount of cigarettes that you stopped. So even if you were at 2 packs a day type of person and you quit smoking, if you even have one cigarette, you're going right back to 2 packs a day within days. Okay. So the gambling addiction is the exact same. All right. If you have a gambling addiction, there is going to be some work on your part that you'd have to do in order to get out of that, addiction. Just like any other substance, just like any other thing, you would have to take steps in order to get out of that properly and for good, right? Because you see, gambling is the coping mechanism. Okay. I don't even really like to call it an addiction or a habit. I like to call it a coping mechanism. And the reason I call it that is because it takes away some of the power, right? It is just a coping mechanism. If you think about it, you're coping with emotional pain. Okay. You're using gambling as the solution to emotional pain. And it's the perfect solution for it because the brain has already learned that if I feel anger and fear and anxiety and sadness and whatever else, then gambling takes all of that away, at least for a time. It isn't unless I lose that, it might come back. But the truth is that it's not just losing that would bring back the emotional pain. Because what happens is this emotional pain isn't just there because of the gambling. It's there because of your life. It's there because there are parts of your life that aren't going the way you want them to go, right? And so I think that gambling is going to become a huge epidemic very quickly, very soon. I think the apps are just getting smarter. They're getting better. There's more advertisements for gambling all over the place. Okay, it's in stores, it's in grocery stores, it's in different areas. And so I know you might feel overwhelmed by gambling. Okay. So for those of you who are not high functioning gamblers and who are sort of hitting more rock bottom and you keep breaking those promises to yourself and you're, wasting your whole paycheck just to chase some losses and hopefully win back some money and things like that. I understand how you feel. It's sort of overwhelming to know that even though you've told yourself you're not going to do the gambling, you're going to use your willpower, you're going to make a decision not to go, you're going to use your willpower to do it. You logically understand that it's not good for you anymore. You reasonably get that you'll be better off without it. You've analyzed your situation. You want things to be better. I understand how knowing all of that means nothing because what happens is emotionally, you still need to gamble. You feel like you need to gamble. And because you feel that, you also feel a sort of overwhelming sense of shame, guilt, pain, just pain in general. a lot of my clients have felt that after they have done some sessions with me, that they are able to see more clearly how they're thinking and how they're feeling about their problem. And when you think and feel about your problem a certain way, that is the way we sort of walk ourselves into the problem. Okay, so I want you to think of it like this. We're in a bubble, and this is us, and all of the thinking we do around the problem is in this bubble. Okay, it's in the bubble. What if this scenario? What if that scenario? Why this? Why that? Why did this happen? Why did that happen? I feel pain and shame and guilt and frustration and anger. And I think and I feel all of these problem things. And I want to find a solution. I want to try and fix my problem. So I keep thinking about it. I keep what ifing it to death. I keep ruminating on all my emotions and problems and scenarios and what ifs. I'm trying to control. I'm trying to fix. And what happens is we get locked in this bubble. And all the ways to get out of the bubble and all the resources that teach us how to release ourselves from the bubble live outside of the bubble, okay, where we can't get to. All right. So what happens is we're just going around this bubble, thinking, what if this, what if that, why this, why that, emotions, blah, 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 blah. We spin around this bubble and we get trapped. We get trapped in our thinking. We get trapped in our emotions. And that's what creates these recursive loops, like the shame and guilt cycle and the habit cycle. So what I want you to do is I want you to understand that limiting beliefs could be a very big part of your gambling addiction. Okay. So, what are limiting beliefs? Limiting beliefs are any belief that you might have that limits you in some way. So, it could sound something like, um, you know, I am weak, I am a failure. It could be something like, nothing I do ever works, or I've tried to quit before and I know that I can't. Like, these are all just types of limiting beliefs. Okay, there's also another category like a negative belief. A negative belief would be more about the world. Okay, so like money is the root of all evil, or happiness comes but never stays, or relationships aren't worth their weight in gold. Right? Those would be sort of negative beliefs about the world in general. Limiting beliefs specifically limit us. You can do it, but I can't. That's a limiting belief. Limiting beliefs are very important when it comes to a gambling addiction, because I wonder what you would have to believe about yourself in order to feel like you even need to gamble. Think about that for a second. If you're watching this and you do have a problem gambling and you're realizing you want to weigh out, maybe you've tried and you haven't been successful, or maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you're so high functioning you don't realize how much gambling is affecting you yet, and you haven't made that commitment to start to try and change things. Maybe you're just there, but just ask yourself that question: what would I have to believe about myself in order to feel like I even need to gamble? Okay, that question, that answer to that question, is a good key indicator in terms of what belief might be driving your gambling addiction in the first place. So, what is a belief? Is it a fact or an opinion? What do you guys think? Do you think a belief is a fact or an opinion? If you answered opinion, then you're right. It is an opinion. It's not a fact. It is an opinion. Now, you can believe in the fact, but at the end of the day, it's still a fact first. For instance, the sky is blue. That's a fact. And I can believe in the fact that the sky is blue, but the sky being blue was a fact before I believed it. Okay. Therefore, it's a fact and not a belief. I can believe in it, I can't have my own opinion that it is blue, but that opinion, that belief is based on the fact that it actually is blue. Okay. So a belief without it being a fact first is simply just an opinion. It's an opinion. And what happens is over time, we have this opinion and we have enough evidence over time, however much time it might take, for us to make a conclusion, for us to make a decision, a conclusion that this is true for us. And once that happens, it becomes a belief. Okay. Whether it's empowering or disempowering, it doesn't matter. Okay. If it's an empowering belief, believe whatever you want. And nobody can tell you what to believe in. Believe whatever you want if it's empowering. But if it's disempowering, if it takes things away from you, if it's limiting your capability and your potential, then let's just start to think about how to get rid of those, right? So a limiting belief is an opinion that is proven through evidence over time that we ourselves have subjectively decided and concluded on that it is true for us, and then it becomes a belief. Okay. So what happens when a person starts to gamble is, maybe that limiting belief sounds something like, if I don't gamble, I won't have a chance to better my situation. Think about that. If you truly believed that gambling was the only solution to better your situation, don't you think you're going to gamble? If you truly believed that, right? If that was a genuine belief. Now, it might not be. It could be something completely different for you. Everybody has their own. But think about how strong belief is. Okay, belief is huge. Belief is huge, guys. Okay, the power of belief cannot be understated. All right, I'm going to tell you guys a story. And it's a story about an elephant. And this is sort of how elephants come into the circus. So if you guys have ever been to the circus, this might be an interesting story. I happened to have a grandpa who was a circus clown, and he was a circus clown, a career circus clown for, I don't know, 50, 60 years. Yeah, his whole life almost. And when I got to the circuses, I liked the trapeze and all the other stuff, but I really liked the elephants. And the elephants, would come out and they'd have this sort of hemp noose around their neck, and this, tamer would be pulling on this noose, and the elephant would just, he would go around certain things, he would do certain tricks, he would stand on a bucket, he would catch peanuts in his, trunk, do all kinds of things, right? Stand on a ball or something like that. And I always thought that was fascinating because if I'm trying to walk my dog and he just decides to put his butt down, now I'm trying to drag him, and it's not very fun. And yet this little 5'10" guy can pull this majestic creature of, we'll say 5-ton creature, 10,000-pound creature across the room, and it's like it's nothing. He just kind of follows him. So I always thought that was interesting. And so, kind of years later, I'm looking into it a little bit, and I want to know, how does a tamer tame an elephant to do those things, right? If at any point the elephant wanted to, he could just trample everybody in the the circus, right? So I thought that was interesting. And so what happens is when a circus is in the uh, market, we'll say, for a new elephant to join its ranks, what they tend to do is they get an elephant that had its parents poached. So it's an orphan baby elephant. Mother and father were poached or something like that, usually from like China. They'll broker a deal, they'll ship it to the States, and now they have this baby elephant, right? And what they do is they put this giant collar on this baby elephant. It's a giant collar. It's got a big chain about 10 feet wide, 10 feet long, and it's a big giant chain attached to this big giant collar. And what happens is they take this chain and they attach it to a giant 4-foot pike. Okay, this giant 4 foot, 5 foot pike, and they put that in the ground. And this elephant is a baby, right? This elephant is a baby. So what happens is it has a sort of 8 to 10 foot chain, and it can walk around where it's anchored into the ground at. It has a circle radius that it can walk around in. But it tugs and it pulls and it tugs and it pulls and it tugs and it pulls and it tries to break free, tries to break free, and it's pulling and it's tugging and it's pulling and it's tugging. And eventually it gives up. Okay, it takes about 8 months. 8 months or so for this baby elephant, after trying day in and day out to overcome this 4 foot metal pike that's just in the ground, and it's trying to pull out and pull out, and it can't. It's physically incapable. It's too small, right? And so it can't. And eventually, it accepts that no matter how hard he tries, no matter how hard the elephant pulls, no matter how much strength it has, no matter how big it gets, no matter how much power it has, it's never getting free. It's never getting free. And so what happens is now when the tamer realizes that the elephant is never getting free, that it's stuck, that's when the elephant tamer starts to train the elephant. Okay. And then no matter how big it gets, the elephant won't even try to break free. So what'll happen is the tamer might take like a little golf pick, a little 3-inch golf pick or something, tie the little hemp rope to it, put it in the ground, tap it in, and the elephant won't even move. It won't even try because it's already accepted and believes that no matter how big it gets, no matter how strong it is, no matter how powerful it is, it's never getting free. So that's the power of belief. And it happens for everyone. Anyone with a sort of consciousness can have limiting beliefs. Right? There's also other ways of explaining this. If you've ever seen, you could look this up on YouTube if you like, but you could put fleas in a jar. And you can see the fleas physically jumping higher than the jar, right? They're jumping higher than the lid of the jar. But you put these fleas in a jar and you attach a lid to it and you keep them there for a few weeks. What happens is that any flea that's in that jar, whether it was a flea from before or a flea that got reproduced, because fleas reproduce very quickly. So a new flea that was just born into this jar, or an older flea that knew he could jump out of it before, after about a few weeks, what happens is when you take off the jar lid, no flea can jump out of the jar. It literally is physically capable of doing so because it has this belief. Think about it. This flea, hundreds of fleas are jumping to try and get out of this jar. And all they do is jump. So they're jumping thousands of times a day. Bam, bam, hitting the top of the jar, hitting the top of the jar, hitting the top of the jar, unable to break free. And so what's happening is every time they fail, they're getting more and more of a limiting belief, right? Think about that. At some point, you take off the lid, 2 weeks later, none of them can jump high enough to get out of the jar. They have a ceiling now. And even if the flea knew that they could jump out before, or if it's a brand new flea, it doesn't matter. It won't be able to jump out of the jar. So almost anything with a sort of consciousness can create limiting beliefs for itself. All right. And that is a big component of gambling and gambling addiction, because there could be limiting beliefs saying, one more win and I'll stop forever, or I just need one more big jackpot, pay off all my debts, and I'll never gamble again. I only need one more win and I'm done. Right? These are limiting beliefs, guys. These are decisions, conclusions that you've created, that you've proven to yourself over time. You've given yourself enough evidence to believe that when you make that next jackpot, you're done. You've had enough XYZ evidence to prove that to yourself. You've made that decision. You've made that conclusion. You believe that now. And so you're going to run with that belief. And then when it happens, well, You sort of break that promise to yourself and you come back 2 weeks later because the belief itself is limiting. So limiting beliefs are huge. Emotional associations that we've talked about are huge. The shame and guilt cycle is huge. Habit loops and how that gets created. Fixed variable rates of change versus randomized variable rates of change. All of these things are components to a gambling addiction, all right? And the truth is that what my clients have found after working with me a couple sessions, they find that the way they think and the way they feel about gambling tends to be a little bit different than what they were originally thinking and feeling. If you genuinely change how you think and how you feel about your problem, you overcome these limiting beliefs, you attach different emotional associations towards gambling and towards not gambling, you break apart problem thinking, distortions, generalizations, and deletions that the mind does naturally. And you start to align the conscious and the subconscious mind together in a goal oriented way to overcome gambling addiction. It can be much faster than what the standard approach is. And that's why I do this, because to be honest with you, I see this becoming an epidemic. I see this becoming bigger than what it is now. And it's already huge, to be honest with you guys. And I see the standard approaches. And the standard approaches to help people with problem gambling can take up to a year or longer. And I've had clients who have been with a standard approach for a couple years. And even after just a session or two, they quit gambling when they come to me. So I wanted to throw this out there because I want you to understand where I'm coming from. Being a hypnotherapist, seeing gamblers and hearing stories from people, I see it only getting worse. And what I also see is there's a lot of misconceptions around it. There's a lot of information that maybe people don't know or are choosing to believe isn't a part of the issue. Whatever the case may be, that's why I'm here. So if you guys like this video, if you have comments about it, feel free to comment. I'll be happy to check out the comments and answer. If you like the video, follow for more to get new updates, and click the bell icon to get notifications of new videos coming out each week where I go over problem gambling, gambling addiction, compulsive gambling, why it is such a big problem, how someone can go from being a problem gambler a lot of years and then becoming free of it. Right? Imagine what that looks like. Imagine what that looks like for yourself. This ability to just walk by a casino and literally not even go in, or walk by a casino, go in, and not care that you're not gambling. Think about that, right? Being able to walk into a casino, all these people are having their fun, they're gambling, and you're not even tempted. Like on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the worst temptation there is, and you have to go gamble. Imagine being at like a 2, maybe a 1. Maybe there's a little temptation, but it's so manageable, so overcomable that it doesn't bother you. Right? Imagine. How would your life be different? What would be different for you? How would you feel knowing that you can go into a casino, go past the casino, and have little to no urge to even get? So that's what I want to help you guys do. If you're ready to do that, check out my webpage, www.gamblingonfreedom.com, book a free consultation, and let's get to it. All right. You have a good day, guys, and glad to see you here. All right.